Soskin.
And I'm Michael Bott. Welcome to the Prehistory Show.
Yes, we've got another good mix of news from around the world this month. Portugal, Turkey, and some interesting research in the UK.
There really is a crazy amount going on, isn't there? I'm worried, that we're going to have to double up. We're going to have to do twice as many prehistory shows to cover the ground, goodness sakes. We could go on for hours if we wanted. Hey-ho, that's going to be a perennial problem. But, yeah.
It's also true. But anyway, of course, we'll finish the show with something a little whimsical, although it probably wasn't funny at all for the people involved at the time. But more of that later.
So I suppose we better get on the show, really. Actually, before that, just a reminder to say, if you like the show, if you like all the stuff that's on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button and that kind of thing. And if you've got a moment, take a moment to look at what we've got available on our Patreon page, the extra perks and stuff you can get your hands on by joining our Patreon fans and supporting us with a monthly donation. I'll put the link up in the corner there. All right, so
well done.
What's it to be? What's the next bit? The news, the first bit of the news.
On with the news. Well, do you know what? I'm kicking off. This is a fascinating piece of research from Bristol University. And this is Professor Joanna Brook and Dr. Tom Booth have been refining dates on human bones collected from 60 Bronze Age sites around Britain, all of which were known to be carefully placed burials. Right? Now, the surprise outcome was that at 26 out of the 60 sites, they found that some of the bones were significantly older than the primary burial. But the older bones were always within a time frame where the remains could have been, or probably were, within living memory of the main burial, meaning that at least some of the time our ancestors were keeping hold of pieces of the dead. Now, obviously, it's impossible to say for certain, but the implication is that people were treasuring pieces of their departed loved ones, whether it was grandparents or great-grandparents. The two most notable finds were one human femur, that's a leg bone, which had been carved into a flute, and there was a grave in Yorkshire where a woman was found buried with two other significantly older skulls.
So we've kind of got to imagine keeping our great-grandparents' skulls on the shelf by the door, something like that.
Yes, or every solstice saying, "Oi, pass me Grandad's leg so I can whistle a jolly tune."
But, we're laughing now, and maybe we shouldn't. But on the other hand, you can't rule out that there was a kind of sense of humour going on there.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Yeah.
And to forgive the awful pun.
Yes. Oh, God, where are you
talking about something humorous here, aren't we? Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I was asking for that.
Yeah. I honest. That only occurred to me just in this moment.
Well done.
So, forgive me. But no, like I was trying to say, joking aside, it's one of those moments, and I think we should give it a hashtag. The personal in prehistory. Hashtag personal in prehistory.
Yeah.
Because we come across this kind of thing time and time again, don't we?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Where a bit of archaeological research suddenly gives us an insight, not into the absolute mindset because we can't understand, but it sort of broadens our concept of what people were doing and going on so that it helps us understand a bit more, or makes us able to contextualize the way they were thinking. And maybe come up with,
It'll be really interesting to see, if they manage to get any DNA out of these, because, if they could do tests and actually show that these were family members, that would be quite profound. But that's obviously still work to be done, so we shall see.
Yeah, indeed. But as I say, it's a major shift in in understanding or
It really
opening
is.
of our appreciation of prehistoric culture in Britain.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving out of Britain, I'm taking us to Portugal, where an important discovery has been made at the centre of the enormous Neolithic site at Portugese in southeast Portugal. So the main site at Portugese is 16 hectares or roughly 40 acres and has been under excavation for over 20 years. Huge number of burials and artefacts have been revealed there. However, this latest discovery is extremely rare outside Britain, and it's being called a Portuguese Woodhenge.
Of course it is.
After this rather similar looking site that we're all mostly familiar with, which is just east of Stonehenge, near to Durrington Walls. So back at Portugese, in the centre of this vast circle, archaeologists have found a timber structure about 20 metres in diameter with an entrance aligned towards the summer solstice. Dating has shown that the complex was in use for around 1400 years, from the Middle Neolithic to the Early Bronze Age, and predictably it is being referred to as a ritual landscape. But I suspect, from the scale of the overall site, it's far more likely to be something more akin to a complex village, or even a town. I don't know, how we'd determine that. Or
40 acres, it is huge, isn't it?
It is huge, yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, this timber circle is something that's occurring within that greater site, but nevertheless, to be calling it a Portuguese Woodhenge is, in my mind, slightly doing it a disservice. Yeah,
it is a little bit. Isn't it true as well that the post holes that they found, they were actually cut into the bedrock rather than dug in soil?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's got to shift your mind a little bit, about first of all, the determination to dig into the rock in order to provide the post holes. But, it brings up all sorts of other questions about how deep the post holes need to be to support, how tall the timber posts would have been in these sockets, as it were. Yeah. Yeah,
it's an astonishing find, isn't it?
But like I was saying, to just refer to it as a Portuguese Woodhenge, I mean, the fact is that the Portugese site is far, far more significant. And the fact that excavations have been going on there continuously for 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks volumes.
I know, it's crazy.
About how much more, the kind of detail and the complexity that this site has the potential to render about the Neolithic and the early Bronze Age. I mean, what was it? 1930s. Maud Cunnington excavated Woodhenge in the 1930s. She just did it over 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's true. It is true.
The Riverside project, Stonehenge Riverside project, were there in 2007. That's another year, and of course this is seasonal. I get the impression that these excavations at Portugese are going on. Well, they've got a longer season, at least, if not year round. So, the sheer bulk of artifacts and stuff coming out of Portugese renders it, makes it a rival to anything coming out of the whole of the Stonehenge landscape.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
Just thought I'd try and put a bit of perspective on that.
Quite right too. Quite right too. Well, I'm taking this somewhere similarly warm. Really, we're going to Turkey for this one. And it's one of those rare occasions when things get a little bit more personal. It's lovely. And this is the discovery of a set of sewing tools dating back 8,600 years. It's just extraordinary. The tools were found during excavations at Exi Hoyuk, and it's one of the oldest settlements in Western Anatolia. It's in present-day Denizli province. Along with the bone needles you can see in the picture there, they found round stones used for spinning thread. And the thing that makes these kinds of discoveries so evocative is that you can know that someone held those between their fingers. You can hold something that was held by somebody in exactly the same way. It's something that it's so relatable. That
hashtag personal prehistory.
it is that it bridges that gap, doesn't it, through thousands of years of history. And it's also worth mentioning, this I find a little bit extraordinary, that Denizli has got a long history of textile making. And the wealth of bone needles found at this site, they've found lots. And it makes you wonder if that tradition just stretches right back into deep prehistory. Have they been making textiles there like forever? It's just really evocative.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, how the traditions associated with any area, can tell you quite a deep story about a place. Yeah. Nice. Don't think I've got anything to add there. I'm going to move on now to something. Yeah. Do you know where we're going to now? Where we're going back to?
I think we do.
All right. We're coming back to Stonehenge. And something that's been in the news a bit recently over the last months, fascinatingly so. And this is about research into acoustics at Stonehenge.
Mm.
And yeah, it's fascinating because, as I said, I'm not really sure why this should occur as something that's leapt out in the media, particularly because the results of the research are not that conclusive.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, it's an interesting piece of research. That we couldn't possibly ignore. It's from a team at the University of Salford in Manchester who've been continuing to study into the acoustic properties of Stonehenge.
Yeah, I was amazed to see that this research has been going on since 2008.
Yeah, the reason for the dramatic appearance in the news is that using laser scans, sound technicians have actually constructed... Do you know what? I'd like to get my hands on that.
Yes.
But I've seen pictures of it. But I want that model.
Yeah. Yeah. Just said Spinal Tap to me.
Shouldn't laugh. A scale model of Stonehenge to record and test its resonant properties.
Yes. It's I don't know where to go with this really, because one of the things that I find extraordinary about this, when you think that the research has been going on so long, and yet everything has resonant properties, that wherever you are, whatever structure you are within, it's going to have an impact on the acoustics. And so, it's not like they found that this was like, a whispering gallery or the beautiful harmonics you get, in some churches, for example. I think what you made the analogy, didn't you? It was like a bathroom. I think I'd read some of the technicians had said that it was akin to the acoustics in an average lecture hall, for example, and you think
something like that. Yes, I can't remember the technical term, but in the music industry, there is some kind of there's a technology that you can take microphones into an acoustic space and capture the reverb, so then you can apply that reverberation, apply the ambient acoustics to any other sound back in the studio. And they've done that with this. They've captured the imprint of the resonant qualities of Stonehenge and applied it to other stuff. I think they've applied it to voice and some singing and some choir singing, actually. Yeah. And do you know what? It sounded like singing in the bathroom to me.
Yeah, I was.
It's a very short 0.6 second slapback echo. It's not a sort of vast cathedral-like echo by any stretch.
It's interesting, isn't it, that there was one article that said, I can't remember the exact headline, but it basically said that, or it was implying that Stonehenge had been built for its acoustic properties in ancient rituals, which couldn't be a bigger load of nonsense. That's not what the researchers are saying. It's not what the conclusions are saying. You almost wonder if that reporter had read the articles at all.
No, I mean, that's absolutely right. In fact, in the paper itself, it says, and I quote, "Overall, it seems improbable that sound was a primary driver in the design and arrangement of the stones at Stonehenge."
I don't think the reporter read that. But it's so unconclusive, isn't it?
To be fair to the media, though, there's only one that claims that.
Yes.
I think, strangely enough, something goes on in our own heads with something like this that we like to imply, because it's if it's newsworthy, it kind of implies that the acoustic properties were intentional rather than emergent properties of just putting up a load of stones in a circle. You know what I mean? We sort of leap in our minds to a kind of...
It's very romantic, isn't it? But I can't help thinking that there is the essential problem that we have absolutely no idea what the finished Stonehenge looked like. You know, whether it was... was it lined with wood? Was it, was it actually always meant to be this bare skeleton out in the landscape? We have no idea.
Was it hung with skins? Was it hung with cloth material? Was the colour involved? All those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Mind you, there is a full-blown Stonehenge, and of course they did use it to compare the acoustics, and that's the Mary Hill Monument is it in Washington or near Washington? In Washington. Yeah.
Well, it's in Washington State, isn't it? Yes.
Washington State, yeah. Yeah, which is a full-size concrete Stonehenge, which was built to commemorate fallen soldiers in the First World War, I believe.
Yeah. And they, as you say, they found the same acoustic properties there, didn't they? Which, well, that certainly wasn't built for its acoustics in the first place, was it?
No. On the other hand, it's one of those things where it gives us a little bit of it. At least the study shows us that it did have a particular acoustic property. And to be fair, unless there was some kind of prototype for Stonehenge somewhere, then after they'd built that or during the building of it, they would become aware that they were building something with peculiar qualities that was unique to that place. And maybe, that's the significance of the study.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that they did the study in the first place, even if to say, well, it doesn't do anything significant. Very inconclusive for me, I have to say.
Yeah. However, it's there.
It is.
And I'll leave a few links in the description so you can investigate the sounds and stuff that we've been talking about for yourselves. And I think the paper itself is freely available, so
yes,
go take a look and make up your own minds about that.
So, shall we move on?
Let us do that thing.
We'll do that. Do you know what? It's time for Prehistory People, when we go behind the scenes to find out what archaeologists and prehistorians are working on out of the public eye.
And this month we called on our friend Professor Vince Gaffney to see what he's up to at the moment. Actually, to be fair, we interviewed him a few weeks ago, a full-blown interview.
We did.
I'll put a link in the corner there so you can go and watch that. And we talked about a whole mass of things. His starting off at the Hadrian's Wall, his beginnings in archaeology, his adventures in Croatia. What else? Warren Fields. That's a peculiar place.
But he could talk all day. You wouldn't get bored for a moment. He's just got so many wonderful anecdotes about his work over the years.
Viroconium, Doggerland.
Yes.
Stonehenge Landscape Project, Stonehenge Hidden Landscape Project, and
Yes.
of course the pits.
The enormous pits that were discovered this year. Yeah. It's just...
We could go on, but I think we better get him on, hadn't we?
Yeah, get her on. Yeah, we'll get him on.
Get him on, yeah. Let's do that.
Yes. Hello, Vince. Professor Vince Gaffney. Well, it's good to talk to you again, and I have to ask you, it's the section of the show. What are you up to right now?
Right now? Well, most of the time I'm looking for money. I mean, it's a literal problem.
I think you need to qualify that.
Oh no, I don't.
Expecting that.
I do. I mean, I actually
seriously.
spend so much of my time looking for money. However, there is a small portion of my day when I'm able to do other things, and and they are generally the more pleasurable ones. And what I'm doing at the moment is pulling together, with my very good colleagues in Croatia and Canada, much of the work that we did in former Yugoslavia and Croatia over the last 20, 30 years.
Oh,
Wow.
goodness.
We published 3 volumes of data in when I was working on the island of Var, and the project which developed from that, which was the Adriatic Islands project, and we literally surveyed every island in front of Split, all the way out to Palagruja, this tiny uninhabited island right in the middle of the Adriatic, and I was the first British archaeologist, antiquarian archaeologist, to go there since Burton went there at the end of the 19th century.
Good.
Wow.
And, this is stunning. But the data set we collected is just without parallel. And whilst we've published where and what it is, we're now working on the synthetic volume. And I've spent the last couple of weeks working on one part and one paper with Branko Kirigan, who I've worked from the beginning, and Tim Kaiser from Canada. And the bit I've been looking at is a wonderful cemetery, a barrow cemetery called Vera, which is on Western Havar.
Right.
And I think it's incredibly important. It certainly seems to be developing from the early Bronze Age, about 22 cairns, but they cluster around the peninsula. They point at the peninsula, which points in a rather phallic manner, I have to say, to the gates of Split. And the gates of Split are 2 islands, Bratchen and Sholta, which point directly to Split, and Split points directly to the Great Pass at Cleese, which goes through the Dinarics and straight into the heart of the Balkans. It's one of the. I now feel that this isn't a cemetery as such; it's a monument. Wow. And there's nothing like it on anywhere on the islands that I know. And it encapsulates the reasons I found the Central Adriatic Islands important, because it's the first place that you can cross by line of sight from across the Adriatic going north. So it links Greece with Rome, and all the way up to the great church estates in Ravenna to the north, but also through 2 great passes into into the heart of the Balkans as well. It's a massive crossroads, this island.
Oh,
And
fascinating.
everyone goes through
Amazing.
it. But it's encapsulated by this cemetery. It's of stone cairns, quite large ones. And you know, it's been with me for 20 years. And I've been thinking about it all the time.
Have you been, Vince? Have you been in contact with your colleagues in Croatia? I mean, yes. Or has it been a sort of reunion? Sort of.
I mean, the big problem. The problem for us was, of course, with this project was carried out and it went to its what would have been its formative stages. There was the Civil War, the National War, Freedom War, and it really disrupted how we did this project. It was a massive project done with relatively few people, but some pals who did all this work, and you know, it took us the best part of 10 to 15 years to publish the data in 3 volumes. And you know, so we've been going back, and at the end of last year, I went back for the Croatian Archaeological Society meeting on Hvar, where we put a paper out on the town of Hvar and its surrounding archaeology and how it worked together. And Vira is one of these is one of the sites just to the north of the town itself. So it doesn't reinvigorate. I've always had this interest and passion for the islands.
I mean, it's not an area that we've really looked at in the context of doing our shows and the prehistory guys and stuff. That's a fascinating, novel area for people to have a look at.
It is great. The caves, the early Neolithic material, the fact that you've got impressowares and on this little island called Palagruja. Palagruja, if you want to do a show, is where you have to go.
Okay, we'll do that then.
It is this tiny two islands, Bali and Vela, Palagruja, and more popes have visited these islands than virtually anywhere else, because if there's any storms or anything, it's your port of call. It's also the only point that you can see both the west and the eastern coasts from. So line of sight travel is controlled from this little spot. When we got there, I will tell you, we had some extra money, which we weren't going to give back to the funding authority, which will not be me. We decided to go and visit this place. We got out there, but via a boat from Hvar, which was absolute madness. It was 11 or 12 hours in a Mediterranean swell. We should have gone to the nearest island, Vis, and gone from there. I can tell you that the fish ate Italian that night because I'd had spaghetti before we headed out. And we got to this island, and we got there, and we said, right, who brought the find bags? Well, everyone had brought the wine, and no one had brought the find bags. And we got out there, and we had to do this collection in sort of pockets in every container we had. But straight away, this place was amazing, because one of the finds was a decorated stone bracer of Chalcolithic period. The place was full of trapezes and you just could not believe this thing. The island had Byzantine fortifications. It had Rome. Roman temple. And it has a prehistoric flint quarry producing specialist arrows on it. This place is amazing. But my colleague Branko Kirgan, who's a Greek archaeologist, has said, well, people believe that the island of Tromiti is supposedly the island of Diomedes, of Greek fame, you know, and of the Greek hero. He said, but I think it's Palagruja. And he said, and you know, there's Greek material on it. And you know, we did this survey. We went back, and apparently, a couple of weeks later, one of the few inhabitants, apart from a donkey on the island, which was the lighthouse keeper in his family, his son turned up with his family and said, "Oh, we saw what you were doing, and we've been doing the same." So they had a bag of archaeological finds they picked up, which is dumped out, and Branko looked at it, and you know, everything out there is amazing. And virtually the first thing he picked up was a Greek sherd, and on which was Diomedes.
Wow!
And sweet.
You know, I mean, so if you wish to do a something from the Adriatic, go to Palagruja. It's the lighthouse is now automatic, but you can rent the accommodation as a visitor.
Oh, marvelous!
Fantastic!
Vince, I'm so glad we asked you what you were up to now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Vince.
Yeah, I hope you'll join us again at some other point. But
we'll
for the
talk to you again soon. Yes.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So, moving on, it's outside broadcast time, and this month, Michael has been somewhere. We've both wanted to go there for a very long time. I still haven't been there. Have a look at this.
I'm standing on a quiet country road somewhere in North Yorkshire. London's about 220 miles that way, Edinburgh's about 180 miles that way. Over there, the west coast of England, about 70 miles, and over that way, Scarborough on the east coast is about 70 miles. Now, I've never been here before, but I happen to know that just over in there, in those woods, is something quite extraordinary. And although the name is known, it is quite overlooked. So, as I say, I've not been here before, and this is something of a recce for me. So I hope you enjoy this little voyage of discovery as much as I do, and hopefully we're all seeing this for the first time together. Okay, let's go. And believe it or not, we've just stepped onto the bank of an enormous henge. How is it possible, you're thinking, for a monument like this to be hidden away from sight in a wood? No signs, no nothing. This is one of the most significant, if not largest, henge monuments in Britain. Not only that, but there's two more of them just south, within a mile. This, we're told, is the least disturbed of the three henges, and actually probably of all henges. I mean, it's rather disguised by the fact it's covered in woods. Of course, it would have been open. But in terms of preservation, this is pretty good. I mean, the ditch down there is pretty, I should think it would have been at least twice as deep as that. It's absurd. It's just incredible to be here and to be standing, you know, aside from Orkney and aside from Wiltshire and the Stonehenge landscape. This has got to be as significant, at least, as any of them. And yet here it is, hidden away in the quiet. I think I'm standing now at the northern entrance, so let's cross over the northern entrance here. Wow, across the ditch. Let's come into the middle. This henge is like the other two is in the vicinity of about 550 feet across. Don't quote me on that. We'll clear that up later. But they're big. So I'm just crossing back over. I'm crossing the berm now to what looks like, wow, quite a nicely preserved high bit of bank. Get up there and see what sort of aspect there is looking down. See if we can get a better sense of scale amongst all the trees. Oh, yes. Looking down through the trees across the berm, and you can see how deep the ditch is. Okay, what I'm going to try and do now is give you a sense of scale by leaving the camera up here and just and going down through the bank and up the other side. Wish me luck. I'll see how this goes. Right, coming down the bank now. Now I've reached the berm, which is wonderfully wide. We'll go straight across here. Ground's a bit soft, and at the edge of the bank. Can you still see me? Down the bank. Oh, careful. Into the ditch, and up the other side. Here we are. Oh, come on, back up the bank. This place is massive. You know what? Even with all these trees, I'm getting the sense of a massive arena. My goodness. So impressive. So impressive. There's nothing like it. Never seen anything like it. Right. I've just walked, 500 yards from the woods that we were in just now. You can probably see them just over there, just behind me. And I've come, of course, as you do, to lie on the banks of another huge Neolithic henge. And if I walked another 500 yards that way, I'd come to the remains of another henge. This one, this middle one, is, in terms of preservation, is halfway between the two. The one in the woods, as I say, is preserved in aspic, sort of, from being in the woods. This one is semi-destroyed, and the other one, further away, is more vestigial. What do you think, Rupert? I just wanted to make the point and provide some talking points for us to talk about in this show, and maybe we can talk about some of the details of this place, because hardly anybody knows about it. Certainly not visited. There are no signs saying you should where to come. If you want to come here, you've got to see it out on the map yourself. But I think there's so much for us to discuss.
Yeah, what do I think? So much to discuss. Isn't there though?
Not half.
Do you know, I have seen over the years, I've looked at photographs of Thornborough, and you see those aerial photographs where you can see that the southern henge is completely ploughed out.
Yeah.
The middle henge is pretty ploughed out. And then the northern henge, you can see there's a circular thing, but I had never had even the remotest clue that it remained inside that wood in the quality of conservation that it's just incredible that it's still there to that extent.
Did you get the slight impression that I had my socks knocked off in the woods there?
It's a good job you were wearing laced up boots. It's it's astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. And when you look at the size, as you said, I mean, they're enormous henges, and in that alignment, that they do mirror Orion, the constellation of Orion, so that they accurately mark out Orion's belt in the landscape. Now, that's something that a lot of archaeologists don't like that, but Knight and Butler's work, they did a wonderful book called Before the Pyramids, and they showed very convincingly how Thornborough Henges do mark out Orion's belt. Now, if you extend outwards from the belt, it's a great shame that farming over the millennia has destroyed so much. But certainly there is at least one other henge, Carnahenge, to the south, sits on where one of the other stars of Orion would fall. So there is the possibility that that the whole of the constellation is marked out.
Yeah.
And that raises so many questions. We've made it quietly public. We're becoming progressively more public on the fact that we believe so many of these structures are to do with animal husbandry and the like, rather than temples. And
or to do with the way that animals were being traded, treated, moved about, corralled, all those kinds of things, all the things that when you've got a meat-based diet.
But one of the things that is so alarming about this is that if we're right, and we are pulling a lot more evidence together as we go along, but if we are right, and here we are looking at Thornborough Henges that mirror Orion in the landscape. And the extraordinary thing is that, Orion is the hunter. Now, you can't escape this. The fact is that we genuinely have no knowledge of how far back in time the constellations were originally conceived. When people first joined the dots in those shapes, and we do know that there are various cultures around the world where Orion is classified, the constellation has different names, but it's a hunter in so many different cultures. Well, what the... It's breathtaking. And so, you walking through that landscape... And
I'm glad that it came across as so spectacular, even amongst the woods, and even coming from my wobble cam, which was there a bit. I was able to do that. But the thing about the astronomical aspects of it, Orion, and that's head stuff for us, and in a kind of way, it diminishes the sight if we just focus on that. We're back to hashtag personal prehistory here, and I don't think I relayed it in the film just then, but I did. There was a clip I did take when that was. I imagined somebody arriving there for the first time, any one of those sites, where you come across land, you'd have to approach it somehow, and you'd climb one of those banks. The sense of space here. Imagine what it would have been like traveling to this place, mounting this bank and being presented with this extraordinary arena. The view, if you've never seen the inside of a henge, if you had never seen the inside of a henge ever before, would have just been awesome.
Bang.
It would, I'm just, the imagination goes wild as to what would have been included in that site. I only say that not to digress from the astronomical things, but just to put another pin in the ground. I think it's thinking about it in overall. You've got to bring these things together somehow.
Well, it's an important pin to put in the ground. I mean, so many different aspects. I was blown away by the width of the berm.
Oh, yeah.
For any of you that don't know, the berm
Oh, yes.
it's the bank. So you come down the slope of the bank, and then you've got this flat area before the ditch, and so that flat area, you could liken it to almost like a public walkway. In my mind, you can anyway. That you can walk around the circle until you get to the point where now you want to go up the bank here, and maybe you want to sit there.
Yeah.
If it's an arena.
Do you know what? When my mind was taking flights of fancy, sitting on the bank there, looking down, I could populate the berm with traders and stalls, and stuff in there perfectly reasonably. Whether that was going on, I don't know, but it just
it's just the scale of it. I had not appreciated the scale of it until that film. So thank you for doing that.
Well, my deep pleasure. And there's so much more to discuss about this. I hope bringing those two extremes into play and talking about it. The other thing I think we may throw in there is, I don't think it's any accident at all that this extraordinary site with the three of them is right. It's quite well in the middle of the what do we call
of the British landmass.
The British landmass. Thank you so much. Exactly what I was trying to say. That it just makes total sense to me that at certain times of the year, people would come from far and near to visit this site. It being not far away from the current A1, which used to be the old Roman road, Deer Street, I think it is, going up and down the...
Indeed it is. So it has been a road for thousands of years.
Yeah.
The Romans didn't build it. It was already there.
And here's the funny thing. Do you know why I ended up at Thornbourough? It's because, I know, I'll do a nice OB. Where can I go that's, just up easy on the motorway? The Devil's Arrows, which are just off the A1. And then I started and looked where the Devil's Arrows were. I thought, well, I might as well pay a visit to Thornborough Henges as well, I suppose. And so the whole thing got twisted around. I did it. I've got some footage of the Devil's Arrows. But the interesting thing is the Devil's Arrows, they're tall standing stones in an alignment. They point you towards Thornborough Henges if you're on the A1. They're just off the A1. A1N.
It's amazing. Do you know something that's that's particularly nice that you did this is that the reason Thornborough Henges was not in Standing with Stones is because we couldn't afford a helicopter and drones hadn't been invented. And we knew that you wouldn't really see much in the landscape, or we thought we knew. If we'd known that Northern Henge was the way it is, we might have gone there anyway, mightn't we? But hey, there you go.
Indeed. Like we say, there's lots to talk about. And I think, Rupert, it is our intention to do a special on Thornborough Henges. And
in the landscape, yes.
There's a reasonable amount of archaeology that's been done, notably by one Jan Harding. Pales, I mean, when you compare the amount that's been done in the Stonehenge landscape to what's been done at this almost equally significant site, it's incredible. It's about 100th of what's been done
it's amazing,
at
really.
Stonehenge. But there is nevertheless some significant archaeology has been done and stuff that really needs to be aired and thrown into the mix about Orion and alignments and all those kinds of things, and how you sell a site to the population so that they come together at a particular time of the year and remember to be there and have it be special for them. Extraordinary.
I think it's a very important point. We know from modern tech, we know, for example, that cattle from Orkney were consumed at Durrington we know that amount of travel was going on. So the notion of people meeting in what is essentially slap bang in the middle of the landscape makes complete and utter sense.
Yeah.
It's not a stretch at all.
And the Yorkshire Show still goes on,
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
I'm right. I think that is right. The Yorkshire Show.
I can't remember what it's called. Is it called the Yorkshire Show? But it is one of the big, what do you call it?
If I got it wrong, I'll
farm shows of of the year. Yeah.
Strap to correct myself. Yeah.
Those,
anyway, are our thoughts for the moment. There'll be lots more to come, as I said.
Yeah.
But, for the moment, I think we'll leave it there and leave you with food for thought.
Much food for thought. Well, where are we going now then, Michael?
We're going to Devon.
Are we?
We are, because do you know what it's time for?
What's it time for?
It is time for Stonehead of the Month.
Stonehead of the Month. Stonehead of the Month.
Stonehead of the Month. Do you know what? It's this month, Stonehead of the Month also turns out to be Mystery Man of the Month.
Yes. Yes, we thought this was going to be so easy, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it's not. No.
However, I took a little break last weekend down to Devon, and I was walking with my wife and my nephew and his partner, and I took them to Merivale. And cutting a long story short, as we were walking up the stones there was a guy deep in conversation with some other people visiting. There were lots of people there, I have to say. And I glanced at the floor, and he had with him shears for grass cutting and a pair of scissors for grass cutting. And this guy had been neatly trimming down the grass around the stones of the Merivale stone rows. And my wife Sharon said he'd make a good Stonehead of the Month then. Why didn't you talk to him? Now, here's where I failed. I didn't. He was so deep in conversation with this other person. I didn't want our little holiday to be about prehistory guys' business. So unfortunately, we moved along. However, just down the road, just down the row, we stopped at the kist in the middle. And this little photograph here, if I zoom in just a little bit there, you can still see the guy just vaguely kneeling in the grass there, clipping away. So, whoever you are, mystery clipper man, make yourself known. Do you know what, Rupert? I do suspect that he's a volunteer with the Dartmoor Preservation Association.
Okay, well, we'll track him down one way or another.
Indeed we will. Because he's got to get his prehistory guy's badge.
He does have to have his prehistory badge, but...
Yeah, so if anybody knows who Mr. Mystery Man is on Dartmoor cutting the grass, please do let us know. Actually, while we're talking about that, I also did go up to Fernworthy, Froggymead, as it's otherwise known, because we had heard tell that the trees around Froggymead had been cut back, and as we know it, as a nice little site that's surrounded by cosily by the woods, in a dingly dell, as it were. I was a bit alarmed that it had been exposed to the elements, but it's not quite so. It has been cut back, and again, I think it's to do with the works on Dartmoor about the monuments rather than about harvesting the trees. So it's still nicely surrounded by trees, not quite so much. But again, the grass has been tended around them, and it's a much more presented site than it was before.
Yeah, well, they've done a lot to expose the rows, haven't they?
Yeah.
Which are all very small stones, which is wonderful. No, it's great. Yeah. Well, there you go. So I suppose that's it, really, for now. All we can call this our current Stonehead of the Month is Mystery Man. It's just the man at Merivale. The Mystery Man.
Mystery Man. Mystery Man of Merivale. Are you going to finish us off now, Mr. Soskin?
Finish us off.
Take us to the wire. Take us to the line.
Yes. I am going to finish this off with a little bit of whimsy. I have to say, I really love this. It's not new. I stumbled across it quite by chance when I was researching various things. And actually, this is from the British Museum, and it's probably the oldest known customer complaint. Right? It's 4,000 years old, from Babylon, and it's one of the cuneiform tablets. And I'm going to read the translation to you. I'll probably praise it a bit because it does go on a bit. But basically, this customer has written, "Tell Nazir," that's this bloke's name, "Tell Nazir, Nanny sends the following message. When you came, you said to me as follows: I will give Gimilsin, when he comes, fine quality copper ingots. You left then, but you did not do what you promised me. You put ingots which were not good before my messenger sits in, and said, if you want to take them, take them. If you don't want to take them, go away. What do you take me for, that you treat somebody like me with such contempt? I've sent as messengers gentlemen like ourselves to collect the bag with my money deposited with you, but you've treated me with contempt by sending them back to me empty-handed several times. And that through enemy territory.
Whoa.
Is there anyone among the merchants who trade with Telman who has treated me in this way? You alone treat my messenger with contempt." He goes on about how disgusted he is with the quality of the copper. And now the funny thing is that after having banged on about get this chap getting his comeuppance, if you look into this chap Nasir, it turns out that he was a bit of a rogue. And this message from Nanny it's not the only person who complained about Nasir's dodgy dealings. And there you go, it's just this wonderful thing. He goes on account of one trifling miner of silver which I owe you, feel free to speak in such a way. Oh, it's priceless. This 4,000-year-old rent. It's wonderful. There you go.
4,000-year-old wearer of the grouchy hat.
Yes,
no wonder it resonates with you, Rupert. Somewhere. Hashtag personal prehistory.
Hashtag personal prehistory.
Can't get more personal than that.
We got names. 4,000-year-old named individuals. Love it. So that's it for this month, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to help the Prehistory Guys channel to grow.
Yes, and don't forget, if you want to help us produce more content and find a lot more content that's available on our Patreon page, come and join us on our Patreon page for as little as $1 a month and get a bunch of extra perks along with it.
Not to mention getting your hands on one of these.
These. So that's it, folks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
We will indeed. See ya.
Bye-bye.